for the little glitch. Thanks again for your time. I apologize for the little technical glitch for the last couple of minutes. So our plan here, folks, is to talk about Spiritism in the lens of this message of liberation, right? So what is it that we would like to call or to say that Spiritism brings this message of liberation, right? So first of all, I'd love for us to define what Spiritism is, right? Because in order for us to connect Spiritism with the message of liberation, you have to be able to identify, right, what Spiritism is first. That's one of the things we're going to be doing, right? But then I'm going to invite you to maybe take on this journey with me. That's why I said buckle up your seats. It's going to get a little bumpy. It's going to go fast sometimes, slow other times, but we'll get there. I promise you'll get there, right? So what is the message that Spiritism portrays? Can it really bring liberation to our lives? That's one of the questions that we're going to argue, right? That it absolutely can. But can we say, or can we argue that beyond the freeing of rituals or dogmas or ceremonies, right? Can the Spiritist ideas really help us see the world with a different set of eyes? Can we use Spiritism as a lens for us to see the world a little different than most folks are used to seeing the world, giving us a different perspective, a different paradigm, not the eyes of confinement and exclusivity that we heard from multiple religions in the past, right? But one that we can see throughout history, a message of love, a message of inclusion, a message of welcoming in every aspect of the way. People, I would argue that people today still long, or they still desire liberation. They long for the liberation of their dependencies, chemicals and whatnot, from their shortcomings, right? I want to free up myself because I can't do this. How do I really liberate myself, free myself from not being able to do X, Y, and Z, right? From cycles of violence, from the threat of a poor harvest, if I want to use some analogies, right? From abuse, from oppression. And Spiritism comes more actual than ever to really show us a compelling message and also an invitation of love, of reasoning, right? And hope that really serves as its main comforting message of liberation. So that's the whole setting the tone. What are we going to be talking about today? Does that make sense? Are we good to go? Let's go together. All right, fantastic.
Yes.
So once again, if you have questions or any comments, throw them in the chat. I'll probably get a notification. I can tackle that, right? If on the spot, or we can really wait until the end. It's up to you, right? I'm here to help you guys out on this journey. So first things first, let's define what Spiritism is for the folks that may not know, or for those that maybe could use a refresh. Anyways, speaking of refresh, when you look at, for example, right, this person who is on the call, or on this slide rather, right? His name is, as I'm sure you know, or you remember, Allan Kardec. And Allan Kardec, his pen name, he actually wrote something, and then he gave us, actually, he wrote a couple of interesting things around what the spirits wrote. So he compiled a lot of spirits' message to really put together this progressive body of knowledge that deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits and their relationship with the corporeal world. That's what Spiritism is, right? So does that mean that it's not a religion? Does that mean that it's a science? Does that mean that it's a philosophy? We'll see those things. But at the end of the day, right, I like to call it this progressive body of knowledge because it started with Allan Kardec. He has not ended with Allan Kardec. We have other spirits that continue to give us messages to this day through mediumship or through automatic writing in a way that we can learn more about the spiritual world. We can have messages that can really bring comforting to our hearts. We see a lot of mothers, a lot of family members who quote unquote lost loved ones. And I use quotes because we don't lose anybody. I'm sure you guys know this, right? Yes, folks that live with us, they may go back to the spiritual world, But the beauty of Spiritism is it shows us that we'll be reunited with those folks later on. That's why I don't like the word or the expression losing people. I like the expression saying a see you later to people that we love, right? Oh, but the fun, of course it's difficult. Of course you have to grieve. Of course there's all those things that happens, and we get it. But at the end of the day, we don't ever lose anyone. So what Allan Kardec did, he compiled the messages coming from mostly France, but also the United States, predominantly the East Coast, right? And then through this compilation, he put this thing called Spiritism ahead of us. Okay? So when I look at that, the first thing that I like to tackle, right, is the perspective that we Spiritists see God a little different than our brothers and sisters from different religions. So, for example, the concept that we have through Spiritism of God is much more in line with what we learned today from science. For example, from Einstein to Spinoza, right? God is much more than just an old man sitting in a throne and worrying about the fate of us humans. And it's usually a white man with a white beard, right? Looking at so that concept of God, that anthropomorphic, anthropos, right? Humane, right? Or the form of man, morphos, the form. So when you look at that, that doesn't make any sense in today's world. And that's why we see a lot of people from different religions say, you know what? I don't understand this concept that God only selects some people and not others. I don't like the fact that you're telling me, or other folks are telling, that God only loves these. What about those? Then my invitation to you folks is, if you are a parent, I hope that some of you are, so you can correlate to what I'm going to say now. If you are a parent, right? Do you love kid one more than kid two? No, correct? You may have a better affinity with your kid one versus kid two, right? Because of affinity, because of personality, because of, that's one thing. But you don't love one kid more than the other. I have two twin daughters. They're 10 years old. They're beautiful. They love me. I love them to death. They're like the best thing in my life that's ever happened after my wife. Does that mean that I love them? No, I love them the same exact way. Some things I have better affinity with one. Other things I have better affinity with the other. But at the end of the day, I love them the same way. So I personally believe in the way that Spinoza's, right? The same way that Einstein believed that when we reveal the idea that God is a person, that's a flawed idea. That's a flawed misconception. But if we understand through, anthropology, if we understand how the message came through by the first revelation, Moses, and then sometimes even Jesus, when he said, the God is me, we're one, we understand that humanity needed that message with that particular tone back then. There's a quote from Albert Einstein that goes along the lines of that he really believed that when God revealed himself to the orderly harmony of what exists, he believed that God oversees everything. He even goes to say that God doesn't, throw dice, right? Not in a God that is concerned with himself and with the fate and actions of him. No, God wants us to be happy, folks, right? So if God wants us to be happy, he wants to give us everything that we need in order to be happy. And how do we achieve happiness? Happiness is not found in an address. Happiness is not found in a religious institution. Happiness is not found in material things, away from them, obviously. So where can we find happiness then? Down here, inside of us. The more we connect with God, the happier we feel. That's why a lot of folks use the expression of glorious when they go through some religious activities, because they can really feel God is close to them. And obviously we know and understand through Spiritism, there's mediumship, there's the actions of spirits that are around us. That's all great, but they can feel it. They can even use the word glorious to mean, oh, I'm at this state of awe that I'm feeling right now. So the very first liberation that we see is when Spiritism teaches us that God is not a person. He's not a man. He's not a woman. He doesn't have any ethnicity, any religion per se. He does not even have any nationality. God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. That's the very first question that we learn through Spiritism. That question really opens our eyes because Kardec himself was so well prepared to ask that question, because the question is, what is God, and not who is God? Because had Kardec asked the question, who is God, he would have assumed that God will be a person. As the spirits are telling us, God is the supreme intelligence. Hashtag he's it. He's right, like that's it, that's God. And the first cause of all things. So back to my example before, if you are a parent. If you don't love one kid more than the other, do you think that love, being the supreme intelligence, is going to love one? No, of course not. God loves us all the same exact ways as we're children of God, all of us, right? And that, my friends, is the very first liberation, the concept of God. Spiritism removes the idea that God is a person, because we understand God is not a person. God is not a he, not a she, right? God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. That gives us the very first liberation. All right? So let's continue. What about Jesus? Because he said, God and me are one. Does that mean that Jesus is not God? Or does that mean that Jesus is God? What do our brothers and sisters from different Christian beliefs believe? Or Christian, what's the word I'm looking at? Christian ideals or Christian traditions, better, believe in God. What do they think? Some of them believe that Jesus and God were one, which, by the way, we respect their opinions, the way that's okay, right? Every religion has a good purpose, right? To really transform the human being to become a better person. We get that. But we Spiritists, we look at Jesus in a slightly different way, right? So let's just do a quick, take on Jesus. The most biographies of anybody in the world are about him. Fact, okay? His life divided how we count calendars right now. Even nature responded to him. He has over 2 billion followers in the world today that call themselves Christians or Christ followers and whatnot. There are so many famous people in the world, right? Let's look at the big comparison here. There's so many famous people in the world. Some are well known by their communities, okay? Some are well known by their followers, their countries. Others are known worldwide, like Pelé, or the famous soccer player, or basketball players, sports player, whatever. I get it. So, but let's ask ourselves a question, right? Just knowing that someone is famous, does that mean that we can truly know that person? For example, a lot of folks all over the world know Pelé as the famous soccer player. Do they all know Pelé as a person, what he does and does not? What I'm trying to build here is the thought that while we see Jesus, we learn about him, we see biographies and all those things, how much do we know about Jesus, about his life? It really takes a lot of effort to study all those things that he did. Luckily, what Spiritism brings is an idea that we see Jesus as just like you and I, folks. He's a spirit like you and I. Obviously, he made a lot better decisions in the past than you and I. He's way ahead of this journey than you and I are. But he started right there, right back there, like you and I did. Same starting point, same difficulties, same scenarios that we have, in a way that he had to achieve, he had to deserve where he is right now, right? He has to really achieve the merit in order for him to be there. So guess what I'm trying to say, folks, is people all over the world, they have heard something about Jesus. Even that, he lived 2,000 years ago, and this and this. But the fact of the matter is, many people are still confused about who Jesus really was. Some say that he was a good man. Most people that are not called Christians say that he was a good man. Gandhi, for example, when he was asked about Christians or Christianity, he said, Jesus was very good. He was a very good man. I have a problem with Christians, not with Christ himself. Those are Gandhi's words, right? Because Christians are not following Christ's behaviors. That was the challenge that Gandhi, provided back then. Others, for example, claim that he was nothing more than a prophet. Oh, you're just prophet, just a medium of God, whatever. Still, others believe that Jesus is God and he should be worshipped as God. Do we believe that? I don't think we do. Because if we look, right, as we learn through Spiritism, question 625, Allan Kardec asked the question, what is the most perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and a model? A guide and a model, someone that we can look up to. And the answer is very clear, it's Jesus, right? If you need to build some aspirations, or whoever I need to look for behavior that I have to really change mine towards that person's behavior, that's him. That's not anybody else. But Flavio, does that mean that I cannot follow my uncle who's an amazing guy? Of course we can. We all have amazing people in our lives that have given us, right, some motivation to behave in a way, or some aspirations to go a certain way, to change maybe something that we were doing, to really overcome a wrong, whatever it is. Yes, we have all those things, which are great. But it could really be said that Jesus himself initiated this liberation with his progressive knowledge or a progressive message, but the message itself that he offered threatened a lot of the religious institutions back then and other structures that were in place at the same time as we know it. For example, he said, you don't have to go to the synagogue to pray. You can pray anywhere, right? We're going to touch upon prayer down the road here, but he said so many great things about guys. Just be honest, right? God loves us, all of us. It's not only the Jews that God loves. No, it's all of us without exception. Unfortunately, this is the caveat here that I think it's important to highlight. Unfortunately, we or folks didn't understand his message back then, and the message is still not clear to a lot of folks today. So what Spiritism brings is the second liberation as Jesus is a human. He's not a God, right? He's a son of God like we all are, children of God, correct? This is the second liberation, okay? All right, so let's get going. When you look at the way Spiritist message is portrayed, yes, obviously Allan Kardec compiled Spiritism. He brought the messages from several parts of the world, mediums. He made sure those messages corroborated with each other, right? Which were great and all that. But one message that's very, very important to highlight is at the end of the Spirit's book. Kardec mentioned something, and then he actually finished the thought in the Gospel according to Spiritism, is that without charity, there's no salvation. And I think this is a very inspired quote that Allan Kardec himself wrote in the Gospel according to Spiritism, because if you look at charity versus Bible, charity versus Al-Quran, charity versus Torah, charity versus the truth, there's so much more that unites us all than separates us. Nobody refutes the idea of charity. Nobody refutes the idea of us helping others. The more you help others, the more you're helping yourself. So when Kardec was very, as I mentioned, very inspired to write that message, he didn't write, for example, without Spiritism, there's no salvation. No, because only a few portion of the world is made of Spiritists. He didn't say without Christianity. No, I have the same thought, right? He didn't even say without religion. Because what about those folks that are not religious, but live very law-abiding lives, that have very good ethics, right? Those are there. For example, my brother-in-law, he calls himself a skeptical or an atheist, but he has so amazing concept of ethics that it's very inspiring to see that. Because to me, even though he doesn't call himself a religious person, he's already learned the concepts back then in that previous life. Now he's just reaping the benefits of living a very ethical life with his wife, my sister, with the world, his family, and everything else. So when Allan Kardec wrote this, as I said, he was very inspired because there's no confusion. There's no conflict here. Because the more we practice charity, the more we really raise our hands to help those who are in need, the more we are there to really touch our brothers and sisters' lives, bringing them some comforting, bringing them some consolation, bringing them a good message, a message of hope, a message of a better future ahead. The more we do that, the more we move ourselves towards quote unquote salvation. There's no confusion here. But when I look at this phrase, I always ask myself the question, right? If Kardec had said without the church or without the truth, right? No. That's why I honestly believe he was very inspired when he wrote that, because nobody refutes the idea of charity. Truth, my truth, your truth. Actually, there's a book called The Five Truths, which I highly recommend. Those are along the lines of the five truths are: one, it's already happened. Okay, it's there, it's documented, it's happened, recorded, and all that. The second truth is the truth that we interpreted from what happened. That goes through our filters, right? Through our social, economic, and all that. The third truth is the truth that I tell others. Sometimes that might not be the same truth that I understood. The fourth truth is the truth that you understood. And the fifth truth is the truth that you tell others. So if he said, without truth, we wouldn't be here right now. I honestly believe that. That brings me, or us, to the third liberation, because charity is the vehicle, right? It's not how many hours you're spending, praying, how many hours you're, attending a conference or going to the Spiritist Center or going to a temple or going to a church, or no, it's how much you are helping others, because that's exactly what Jesus did through all his life. I love this picture because this picture really shows, right, that Jesus practiced charity every single moment. He used every single opportunity to practice charity to those, right? He cured the sick. He healed the afflicted. He spent time assisting those that were on the verge of society. Prostitutes, criminals. Speaking of women, he treated women with utmost respect. That was the first time ever that somebody with a status like Jesus, right, treated women the same way. For the women here, watching us, if you believe that your life is difficult now, imagine if you lived 2,000 years ago, or when you lived 2,000 years ago. A lot more difficult, a lot more complicated, a lot more oppression. So he was the very first true egalitarian, as we know it. He really challenged, my friends, the status quo of the time. He was always helping, always serving. This is the Jesus that we have to pay attention to. This is the Jesus that we learn through Spiritism. The very same Jesus that, thanks to Spiritism, right, we have as a model and guide, as someone that we can really use as the utmost inspiration for our own lives. So this really brings us to the third liberation, right, as I mentioned, because again, charity is, right, the vehicle, as we learn. When you look back at what Jesus told us, and he told us many things, right? There's many passages and scriptures. Some are really good. Some we believe that through translations, their sense now is a little off, right? But one that I think it's very important to highlight is when he say that he did not really come to destroy the law, but rather to fulfill it and to demonstrate with his own examples and words of wisdom, right? How did he do that? In the form of parables, so that we will be able to understand back then and still understand now, depending on our levels of intelligence, knowledge, motivation, dedication, and etc. Because our knowledge and our understanding back then were very limited, right? Due to lack of sciences. Like now, a lot of thoughts are being put on understanding Jesus' passages. And this one I love because it really shows, right, what he's asking all of us to do. He says, and I quote, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind and with all your strength." That means above everything else. Everything you got, you should give it right to God, to love God. That's it. And he continues, You should love your neighbor as yourself. It didn't stop in you should love your neighbor. Because how do I love my neighbor? Yeah, if my neighbor's nice guy, I love him, okay. But if it's not, if he's like a douchebag, it might not be a little difficult conversation there, right? So when we understand these situations, I have to love everybody the same way as I love myself. So how do I learn to love others? I have to learn how to love myself, how to respect myself, how to care for myself, how to invest in myself, how to take care of myself. And then I can really do the same for my neighbors. But Flavio, what about those neighbors that are not the nicest people in the world? How do we do that, right? So again, love here does not mean they have to be buddies with those neighbors. You have to love, respect, help if needed, but doesn't necessarily you have to be friends with them or buddies with them or go watch a Red Sox game together. I know, no, you guys are not a fan of Red Sox. I get it. It's okay, right? But what I'm trying to say is love here is a much more complex word than just getting along with everybody because it's impossible, right? We cannot please Greeks and Trojans at the same time, nor Jesus could. So the whole idea is if that person doesn't want to, that's okay. I respect, I'll pray for him or her. I'll let that person take her way. I want to take maybe a detour, come back to something that we've talked, which was the idea of the role of women, right, back in the days. Leon Denis, who was a disciple of Allan Kardec, he was a follower of Allan Kardec, published a few books, and one that I have an immense respect and admiration is The Problem of the Being, right, the Destiny. So when his book, he writes a lot of things, and one in particular that I think it's really important for us to understand as we're looking at the liberating message of Spiritism is how women were treated differently back then, right? Jesus was the first really true egalitarian that treated women with respect and all that. And then let's look at what Leon Denis teaches us about that. The role of women is immense in life. Sister, wife, or mother. She's a great comforter and the loving counselor. For the son is his future, while she prepares the future human beings. This is the first phase of the first, step of the paragraph. And then you say, okay, I get it, but, isn't a woman a lot more than that, right? This book was written in 1910, by the way. But then he continues. This is the most important piece, right? He said, therefore, societies that depress women depress themselves. The respected woman, honored with enlightened understanding, is what makes the family strong and a great morally inclined and united society. So what about families that don't have women? One of the couple, in the couple, right, plays the role of a mother, and you can see very clearly, right? One plays their role, more connectivity with the children and all that. I'll give an example. As I said before, I have two beautiful daughters. They're 10 years old. They love me. We can get along so well. We do a lot of things together. Papa this, Papa that. It's amazing. But when they get sick, they want to see mom. There's no other way, right? So that biological connection, by the way, science corroborates that now, that if you are a father here watching us, right, either live or later, the love that a mother has to a child, it's something that we can never achieve. And that's the beauty of Spiritism, because we have other opportunities to come back in a new life as a mother, right? And really learn how to be co-creators as we learn through Spiritism. So the fourth liberation here that I want to highlight with us is that the idea of equal rights. Spiritism really brought up the idea of equal rights. And then maybe a few months ago, 6 months ago, I was talking about this with a different audience, right? And then somebody said, well, what about the disciples? They were all men, right? You mentioned, equal rights. What does that mean? You may be asking that question yourself. But then it was actually an interesting question that I got from the audience. But then I think it's really important for us to remember when Jesus showed up himself for the resurrection, as some folks, like to call it, who did he show up to? To his father? To the disciples? No, right? It was Mary of Magdalene. But why he came and showed himself up to Mary of Magdalene? Because as we learned through Spiritism, Mary of Magdalene was the spirit that was able to really progress the most in one incarnation back then. The disciples who were living with him all the time did not progress spiritually as much as Mary did, right? And then he came to show up himself to her, to really show us, right, some of the important things that we have to treat everybody with respect. That's the idea. So forced liberation, equal rights. Everybody should have the same rights, as we know, right? So let's take a little, detour here, because our time is running out, which is great. That means you're either paying attention or you're sleeping, one of the two. So I'd rather like to believe the first one is the truth one. It's okay. The ruling is still out there, depending on the number of questions and interruptions down the road. So let's just bring up the idea of the Divine Comedy. Have you guys seen or heard about this book before? Give a little thumbs up or, whatever. Okay, yes. So this was a book that was written by Dante Alighieri back in the 1700s. And this book brings a lot of images of what Dante believed, right, was the inferno or the hell. Then the question that I have for you is, does hell really exist? What about life after death? Does that exist? What happens when we pass? What happens when we, quote unquote, die? Right? Every minute, my friends, thousands of people in the four corners of the world make the great pilgrimage back to the spiritual world. Thousands, every day, every hour, okay? It happens that we human beings forget that the quality, right, of our earthly pilgrimage. We're here as travelers, and the journey that we call life is nothing more than just one chapter of our lives. We always forget, or most often we forget, the reality that we're not physical beings with a spirit. We are all spirits with a physical body, right? And this trip, I'll tell you, right, that we have all of us in front of us. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 30, 40, 50 years. We all expect to happen way down the road. It could happen anytime, as we know. And the luggage is the key component here. What kind of luggage are we going to bring back to us when we depart, when we go back to the spiritual world? Jesus told us not to collect treasures where thieves can steal, or rust can take over. No, he asked us to collect treasures where we can take those with us in our trip back then. So my suggestion to all of us, you should spend a little time reading Andrew Lewis's collection of books, right? Because it really talks to us. He really talks to us about this, life in the spiritual world. It's a collection narrated by this spirit, Andrew Lewis, through the medium Francis Xavier, that really invites us to reflect on the relationship between our plane, terrestrial plane, or here, and the spiritual one. 13 books in this collection presents us with unforgettable characters who are, after repenting their mistakes, after realizing, I should have done it, I got to go back and fix it. After getting to fix their mistakes, or sometimes even due to that undue baggage fees, right? I'm sure you guys are flying. You all know that we cannot take 20 bags with us on an airplane. It's going to cost us a lot of money, right? Same way that, what kind of baggage are we expected to bring back, right? All the love, all the charity, all those things that we've done, or the hatred, the deception, the betrayals that we might sometimes still do it here and there. So this collection, my friends, serves as a great, educational purpose for us to see life in the spiritual world with very different set of eyes. I hope we have those in that library shelf back then, Anna, that folks can, see, she's giving me a thumbs up, that folks can really come in and take them and read them. And it's amazing, right? It's an amazing collection. And this really gives us, or brings us, the fifth liberation, which is the fear of death should be gone, folks, right? Because we should not fear death anymore. Death shouldn't, because we understand what death is. Okay? All right, moving on. Let me just bring a passage from Paul of Tarsus that he wrote. I love this passage, right? I'll just give you a couple of heads up. So I love this passage because for several reasons. One, it's a great description of our lives. It's a recognition of our failures, our shortcomings, our difficulties. But at the same time, it's a reassurance that God is always there for us, no matter what happens. We can learn from Paul here, and in this particular letter to the Corinthians, there's no eternal punishment. And we are never, folks, abandoned by God. As a matter of fact, God is always oppressed. We are pressed, rather, on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. This is a clear evidence that the idea that hell that was sculpted to us back in the days doesn't exist because we're never abandoned. Paul told us, right, in a letter to the Corinthians. What does that mean? That God never leaves our side, my friends. And this is the sixth liberation, that God is our shepherd. And he's going to always go after, right, those that, those lambs or those sheep that's going to maybe go away from the herd, right? So we get this. That's, again, the idea that, no, hell does not exist. We understand a little different. How do we understand? For every action, there's a reaction. And an opposite, right? So every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the beauty of Spiritism is everything is permitted. Nothing is prohibited in Spiritism. There's no problem, can't do this, can't, no. However, we learn through Spiritism that if you do this, that's going to happen to you. If you do that, that's going to happen to you. It's, cause and effect. This is the beauty of it, because we all have choices ahead of us, correct? And we must really have heard the term of, hey, life is full of choices. I'm sure you guys have heard that term. Oh, it's all about choices, right? But how about the idea of fate? Because some people still believe in fate. Oh, I was born that day, that age. When I was 18, I was supposed to do this. When I was 24, I was supposed to get married. When I was 65, does that really exist? Some, traditions out there believe that. Of course, we respect, but we believe differently. We believe that my life right now is the best set of characteristics that I can have in order for me to progress. And that includes where I was born, what part of the world I'm from, color of my skin, my sex, gender, all those things. So Spiritism helps us understand that every situation that we have in our lives are there with the purpose to get us, the right path or to make us better, right? And here's what we learned from the Spirit's book. Fate only applies, right, or only exists when applied to the choices made by spirits upon the incarnation. So they can undergo a specific trial. As I mentioned before, there is some specific set of learnings that if you're a mother and you're able to really deliver a baby, we guys will never have that chance to learn in this life. That's why we must come back in different lives to learn that, right? The same way as one life we are, perfect. Other lives have different difficulties. In one life, you have these types of, challenges. Other lives have those types of challenges. But at the end of the day, we're all learning, right? This is, again, set of trials that we all go through in order to be better at the end. And this, my friends, really brings us to one that's a very important topic that I'm sure that here or in Oregon, nobody has any issues with their families. Everybody gets along well, right? Anna, there's no issues, no challenges. Look at this perfect family there. I see the guy screaming on the phone, maybe working or whatever, the deal that's not closing, he's losing some money, whatever it is, concerned about the time and all that. Look at the wife, so stressed out, she can't really wait to go on vacation to the beach. Look at the perfect picket fence, right? White picket fence. Look at look how happy the son is playing like a Nintendo Switch or whatnot. Look how happy the daughter is listening to the music. So the one thing that we learn differently from Spiritism is the idea that we have two types of families. Yes, two, not only one. The first one, right, is our blood family, but they don't always, right? They're not always our universal family, because the universal family that we learn through Spiritism is really from those folks that we have a communion of ideas. That's what keeps spirits together, not necessarily blood, not necessarily, hey, we have the same parents. No, sometimes we have friends that we like a lot more than our siblings. Not my case, I love my sister, right? But there's a lot of examples that we see that, because honestly, having a sibling like that, right, you understand why that person will do that. So the family that we have here is the best vehicle that we have to really put in practice all those learnings. And as we learn through Spiritism, this is really the eighth liberation, because it gives us a different set of purpose to our families. Not that I don't have to respect, no, the family is there to teach us what we need to learn, as opposed to my family. Yes, we have to honor our parents. We have to do whatever we can. We have to dedicate to our families. All those things are still there, but Spiritism gives us a different set of lens. It's looking at the idea of our families with the right purpose in mind, right? So let's recap, because I think there's a lot that we talked about here. It's important for us to maybe we'll go over one more time. The first, right, liberation message: God is not a punisher. God does not take pleasure in punishing people. God does not. God wants us all to be happy, my friends. He wants us to achieve, right, happiness, have very good, fulfilled lives and whatnot. That's the first message of liberation. Jesus is our dearest brother. He's always there with us, no matter what happens. He's given us his message. He's even bringing inspiration for others to craft messages that don't even have his name on. I know sometimes it might be a little arrogant when we say this, but at the end of the day, right, we have to look at this a little beyond the eyes of society and look at this as we're all children of God. And Jesus is our big brother. Like there are other brothers out there. They have brought a lot of great messages too, right? Charity is the vehicle, not Christianity, not Spiritism, not the church, not the temple, only charity. That's the only vehicle that we have to really get us to a better place, right? Eco rights for all spirits, because guess what? This life, you're here. In a previous life, you might have been a slave. In another life, you were a slave owner. In another life, you were very poor. In another life, you're very rich. All these conditions gives us different set of experiences of learning. And I know some of these are very harsh to think about it, but my friends, let me just invite you to think about this. This you right now is the best you that's ever been, right? You yesterday, 100 years, previous lives, were not as good you as you are right now. So this is our best version 20.0 or whatever, right? Every incarnation, we're getting better. Every incarnation, we're learning, we're developing, we're maturing, we're getting a little more, enlightenment and whatnot, right? That's why equal rights is so important, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow, right? Death is dead. That's what Spiritism brings us, because there's no such thing as death. There is this whole journey back to the spiritual world that we're going to suffer, we're going to miss our loved ones. Yes, my mom passed away 2.5 years ago. It was very difficult for me because I love my mom. I still love her. We were like super close. I talked to her every single day. But even in the moment of her passing, she was teaching others how to behave in a way that we learn through Spiritism. So that message to me was more inspirational than anything else, right? That keeps me going. That gives me the flames to really broadcast the message as long and as loud and as wide as I can. Because I'm going to be reunited with her down the road. I'm going to see her again. She still sees me right now, which is amazing, folks, if you know that, right? If you grasp that concept. God as a parent, not a judge, that's a big one too, right? Because a lot of folks are, the judgment day. No, the judgment day is right now. It's what we do with others. It's what we do with ourselves, with our family members, right? We're only destined to be happy. That's our destiny. There's no other fate. rather than happiness. And it really gives us a different set of lens for the purpose of our families, why we are in a family that we are. We are, my friends, I can tell you, we are in the best place with the best people, the best era, best epoch of our lives is where we exactly are right now. There's no other way than that, because those are the opportunities that we have to learn, to really get the invitation to reflect. Am I treating my brother this way? Am I treating my parents that way? Am I treating my kids that way? What kind of message am I getting here? What kind of learning am I getting here? Yeah, they're difficult sometimes, but oftentimes we say, oh, our parents are difficult. We never say we are difficult, do we? Notice the change in perspective. What can we do not to be the difficult ones? And that's our learning. That's what we learn through Spiritism. But yes, we can love somebody, we can have more affinity with somebody that does not have the same blood as we do. That's perfectly fine, because those spirits are spirits that are more attuned, are more in sync, right? That with us than are even our family members. And that's okay. Really gives us the purpose for our families and whatnot. Then I'll close with this. Jesus is our best model and guide, right? When he said these words, whoever desires to come after me, let him or herself deny him or herself and take up his or her cross and follow me. What he's saying here, folks, is every one of us, right, have an amazing life ahead with amazing things that we gotta be accomplishing, with amazing blessings ahead of us. For us to get to that mojo, to the mindset, is to follow Jesus' life. When he says, deny him or herself, let away our egos, our pride, right? Let that all go away. At the end of the day, we're all the same. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, tall, skinny, fat, that doesn't really matter. Nothing matters. What matters is what we do to others, as we learned through Spiritism. And Jesus did everything he could to help, to heal, to comfort, to spread the message of love, hope, and better days ahead. I hope it's been helpful. That's what I wanted to share with you guys today. And I'd love to take any questions, comments, love to turn this into a conversation if possible.
Thank you, Flavio. That was great. It's very nice to see kind of in one slide. And if you can go back to that slide that basically has the 8 messages of liberation, I think that's very important. There's so many things that you talked that kind of really resonate well with me. One of the things is that, you know, like the collection in the spiritual world from André Luiz, I know that some people do not see as part of, you know, Spiritism because it wasn't really written by Allan Kardec. Nevertheless, Chico Xavier, I mean, the name Chico Xavier, the name of our center, Spirit Center here in Portland, he was such an amazing and fantastic medium. He, you know, psychographed more than 500 books, and some of the bestsellers that he wrote were these ones from André Luiz, the collection on the spiritual world that you wrote, you mentioned in previous slides. And I think it's so important to you to bring that up because we know that some people kind of get attached to this or that book, or when they read André Luiz, they are much more entrenched to the story rather than the message behind the story, right? So this message of hope, the message that life continues, the message that we bring with us, the luggage, as you well said, of the good things and the wrong choices that we made during our incarnation. So I think that was super important. And I don't know if you want to comment anything about the books from André Luiz.
So a couple of things, right? So if you look at the works of, I call him Francis Xavier. Some people call him Chico Xavier. Right? It depends on how we call him, the same person, in case you're wondering. Yeah, he was the most prolific mediums of all times. He wrote over 500 books, never took a cent out of those books for himself, because he would say that those books were not his. He wrote through, automatic writing or channeling, or, psychography, as we call them sometimes. So I think the message here is one, right? He dedicated his life towards helping others. All the every opportunity that he had, he really embraced that without a chair, there's no way out, right? So his life is admired. His life was studied. One time, I remember reading a book by a biographer. And if you look at the Francis Xavier's biography, there's a couple of great, amazing stories there. One of them was two nuns that were on the plane. They were going down to Brazil to spend time with him because they wanted to meet, right, this person. So he was admired by folks from many, many different religions, right? Different walks of life. He treated everybody with respect. He would go to a jail and he would change the environment of the jail right away. So when you look at this, right, it's someone that really exemplified Jesus' teachings at the very best. So without a doubt, one of the greatest examples of humanity or humankind that we have in recent years, for sure, Anna. And the collection, right, the collection of the Spiritual World by Andrew Lewis. Yeah, some of these, I mean, those are books, my friends, right? With every book, with every romance, with every movie, there's stories and there's things, because it was trying to, again, explain the story in a way that really it's pleasing for the reader. That's why, some folks they critique them. No, there's amazing stories there. And they should look into those as great stories that really talk to us about the spiritual world, right? Hope that helps, Anna.
Yeah, no, and just to complement what you said, those stories is not about other people. These are stories about us, ourselves, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
As we dig down into the moral content behind the words, and if I think it's a teaching practice that we also saw from Jesus through the parables, right? So kind of through stories, trying to give this moral lesson, and that's what we see as well in Luis. But these books are not books to be read in a hurry, read during a weekend. These are books to be studied and engraved and kind of diving down, because each one of all the information that is put in the book, there is a reason why they put that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well said.
so I will stop for a moment, otherwise we will keep chit-chatting here, see if anyone has questions, comments for Flavio.
So here's what's going to happen. If you have any questions, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just kidding.
Well, I have a comment. The picture that you showed with all the different ethnicities and the bloodlines. I like that. Yeah, I like that. Yes, that to me resonates, because a lot of times we don't always connect with our immediate family, and we do find loved ones outside of our family, like our spiritual community. We become very close. I mean, we become brothers and sisters. For me, it's paramount. I think this is really awesome. I like that picture. I actually took a picture of it, and I might use that picture, just letting you know.
You're more than welcome to use it and reuse it, Regina.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, very well said. I think this is the whole paradigm shift that we learned through Spiritism, because let's be honest, right? What's the most segregated time in the American society, even today? Sunday mornings, right? So why is that so? Christ said the same message to everybody. Why the interpretation was different in one way versus the other? Because humans, right, use their imperfections in order to mold the message in one way to please this group of people versus that group of people. That's why we see, unfortunately, Sunday morning is still the most, separated time in American society. which is a fallacy if you think about it, because as we Spiritists learn differently, right? We're all brothers and sisters. We all have different situations in our lives. This time I may be born, with this type of skin. That doesn't really matter, right? Yes, we acknowledge the fact that, for example, if you're a Black person today in the United States, your life is a little more difficult than if you're not. That's a fact, right? We acknowledge that. But even within that fact, there are opportunities to learn differently, to get the moment and translate that into a progress for us spiritually, right? So once we have that mindset, we change how we see our brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Right?
When it's all said and done, it's just skin. Underneath the skin, we're all the same. Yeah, and our learning, our journeys are different.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we are all brothers and sisters when it's all said and done.
Thank you, Regina. Anything else, folks? Any questions?
Yes. I had a question about the liberation. And the liberation is possible when we feel that we are in a prison. We are, our hands are together with the chain. We are in, we should suffer that. Then we are looking for liberation. This feeling should be in us, and then we are looking for somebody who can help us. And in Christianity, we are looking for Jesus to help us, and that is the Spirit. Where is the Spirit? The Spirit is within us. And I think when you say you should love the Lord, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all strength. From these 2 billion people that they are follower, how many of them they do that? And the question is that because Jesus says you should know the truth, and the truth make you free. It means that liberation is his freedom, what Jesus says, and know the truth. How many of us, these 2 billions, know the truth and are looking for the truth? Where is the truth? What is the truth? That is the question. When we know the truth, we are going that. When Jesus says to, I think, Petrus, that ask for God, he said, you can see me? Said, yes. Said, this is God. When you see me, you can see God. Then we have to be able to see, to recognize, and to be able to make some connection with the person when we want to love him or we want to follow him. That is to know the truth first is the first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohsen. I think it's how you say your name, right? So a couple of things that I got from your comment. One is how many people are doing. I think there's a great question. I don't have the answer, right? To be honest, but I still see not a lot, right, are doing this. I think a lot are trying to, but they're not there yet. That's why I was just talking to Regina. Look at all the separation that we still have today, right? There's no word here that says love your neighbor like your. No, it's everyone. No exceptions, everyone, right? So I think the message is very clear how we are getting there. I think we're progressing. Thanks to Spiritism, we see this message with a different, maybe a little more advanced tone in there, right? That Jesus didn't really come to destroy the law. He came to fulfill it, as I mentioned, with his examples of love, of wisdom, right? He treated everybody with respect. He cared for everyone, right? As opposed to just those that call themselves, Jewish or whatnot. So when we look at this, right, it should at least brings us a motivation to see the world with a different set of eyes. Again, does that mean that everybody's doing? No, I think some days we're doing this more than other days too. Let's be honest with ourselves. Not every day you're able to do this. I don't believe, right? There's no angels here. in this analogy they were trying to make. But at the end of the day, I think what's important to highlight is for those folks that are seeking more, are looking for opportunities to be happier, to live more fulfilled lives, there's definitely something that Spiritism can help them, right? Open their eyes, remove the blur, right, of our vision sometimes. That's a great comment. Thank you, Mosen.
Hey, Flavio. Good morning from Florida. I was
It's
just
actually good
cleaning.
afternoon already, not good morning.
Yeah, for us it's afternoon. Yeah. And I'm just cleaning the mess of the hurricane passing through Jacksonville. Thank goodness was not too bad like was for our brothers and sisters in Fort Myers and Naples and that area.
Mhm.
They are in the devastation things. So you talk about happiness and you talk about charity. And Chico Xavier, he practically, like you said, he was the great example of charity. As Jesus, our great model, and what he did here on earth, is practice of charity. So what we face in the world today is the separatism of religions, of politics, and of races. What we can do to be truth with Mosan, a question and comment of the truth is important for us to know the truth. And how can we express without input religions and other brothers and sisters doing charity, helping to spread the message of love on the earth today. Without, like you said, the most important is charity. It's not about religions. It's not white or black or left or right. So what you can do for helping our brothers and sisters learning that love God, as you start your lecture today, teaching about who is God, no? What God's representing to us. And if we do not feel God, if we do not love God with all our heart and our soul, and if we do not have this love to ourselves, how can we share it? Charity, how can we help our brothers and sisters?
So if I understood the question, there was a lot of things said there, Tanya. Thank you. If I understood the question right, if we don't understand the concept of, for example, God as a parent, as opposed to as I mentioned before, a punisher, right? Some of our friends, our brothers and sisters, still see God as a punisher, as opposed to a parent, right? So if I don't understand these concepts, if I'm not a spiritist, how do I do this, right? Folks, let's be honest, right? There's something called conscience that we all have. We all know when we're driving 85 miles an hour on the highway, we are actually not following the laws. We're going a little beyond the laws, right? So we know this. There's something called the conscience. In the Spirits book, question 621, Allan Kardec asked the spirits, where is the law of God written? The spirit said, in our conscience. We all know this. We all have this inside of us. The challenge is the message that's out there in our society blurs our vision, and we forget that, or we interpret it in a different way. So ultimately, right, some of the things that we can all do is really to be nice to each other. When somebody's trying to bring an art, no, let's just be nice. Let's just change the conversation. Let's just try to help. Let's put ourselves in that person's shoes, right? Let's try to see the world through the lens that the individual sees the world, so we can understand his or her condition better, and always help. There's no other way. Because do you guys know when we can change somebody? Never. We're not going to be able to change anybody. We can change ourselves. We can help ourselves, right? We can be the change in ourselves that we would like to see in the world. That's what Gandhi said to us. Be the change you'd like to see in the world. The more we help others, the more we assist, the more we volunteer, the more we contribute, the more we collaborate, the more we work together, the more we talk, the more there's, a dining table conversation. as opposed to, hey, I don't care about you, because you have different thoughts, we're not moving the right direction, right? And the more we do that, then, what is so interesting with Tanya? Look at her life. She's very happy. She has what is different on her? Then they'll ask you that question. And then you say, because I'm a spiritist, because I follow this. This helps me, may help you, I don't know, right? But to me, this is what changed my life. That's what changes. That's what really inspires people to move together. Not try to convince because we are, no. Because at the end of the day, we're still very imperfect beings, right? That's my thought. Not sure if I answered your question, Tanya, but I hope I did.
It really helps. And one of the important things for be happy and practice charity toward yourself, it is the inner transformation. And more you know yourself, more you're being charitable toward others, isn't it?
100%, yeah. The whole for us to make the longest trip that we can all do, and not from Portland to Boston. No, it's from here to here. That's the longest trip that we have to make, right? To really align our emotions with our thoughts. And they're difficult sometimes because we are taught by society, by our parents, by a lot of things, right? Some things that was the best that our parents could do, or that's what the best our society could do at the time. But as we see the world with a different set of eyes, more broader, more egalitarian for all of us, right? That God is a father, a mother, right? Not a judge. That our families are there to help us progress, right? That have a purpose in the families, right? The more we learn these things, the more attuned we get with divine laws that we learn, right, from God. The closer we move towards those divine laws, the happier we feel, right? That's the true happiness, the glorious sentiment that I said before.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time with us, your teachings today. Thanks so very much.
Thank you.
The comment that you mentioned, it reminded me something that Paul said, which is preach all the time and only when needed, use your words.
Yes.
So I think that our behavior and thinking that Jesus, during his mission of 3 years, he didn't write anything. So the only thing that he did is that he lived his words, and those examples were so impacting to people's lives that, as you said, we're able to change our calendar. He became the topic for books that have been, more written about, and there is a reason why. Right?
Yeah. And if I can give an example that's a non-spiritist example, as Anna mentioned, right? Preach always and only use your words when necessary. That phrase was written by Paul. Francis of Assisi mentioned that word several times. And what did he do to the Catholic movement all the time? You know what? I don't really want to be part of this, but I'm gonna still do my part. I'm gonna still help others. I'm gonna still do what's needed for me from a charitable perspective. And he lived an amazing life, right? Helping others, dedicated to others. So that's another example. That's not a spiritist example. That's why I want to say, folks, that the big difference that I see, right, in my logical mind that we learned through Spiritism is that every other religion out there, most of the religions out there, right, they believe they are the only one. There's no only one. There's several messages out there. They're all good. They're all great messages, right? I think we should all look what's the best one that can really transform ourselves so that we can be the inspiration, the change inside that can inspire others to change it as well, right? Like Francis of Assisi and etc. Right?
The point is not spiritism itself, but living in spirituality, bringing spirituality into our lives. As you said, remembering that we are here on this realm for a few years, at the most 115 years, but our
Give or take, yeah.
Spirituality. It is.
Yeah, 100%.
If there's no more other questions, we're gonna wrap up. So at this moment, we thank you, Flavio, for being here with us and sharing your findings, your learnings with all of us. There's on those 8 topics, there's so many things that we need to bring into our conscious, knowing that we live for eternity, that we are all brothers and sisters, that we have a God who is the creator of the universe, of universes, who is a loving Father, full of compassion and patience, that the way to our growth and progress is through charity. And the importance of our families here, that we have the blood ones, but we know that we are all brothers and sisters who are here to learn to love each other and to be happy. So with that, we ask the celestial beings here to share with us the spiritual passage, blessing each one of us, giving Flavio these beautiful roses that he can take with him home as a thank you from all of us for spending this hour and a half with us, for preparing this beautiful content and sharing his knowledge with us. May this sense of peace and gratitude stay with us during our week. May we continue to think and process all the information we received today, so we can bring it to life in everything that we do, in everything that we think, in everything that we say. Dear God, we thank you for your greatness, for your compassion with us and your patience with all of trespasses. We ask you to bless our waters, putting there all the energies we need to balance ourselves spiritually and physically. We thank all the good spirits that stayed with us, all the spirits that were as us students this morning, and we say thank you.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Flavio.
Thanks, guys. It was great to be with you. It was awesome.
We wish you